Imagine you could take any type of video of any subject and seamlessly composite it on top of any background image or video with one click. Well, now you can. I developed a free workflow that will use AI to automatically cut out the subject, match the lighting to the background, fix the edges and add additional effects like depth blur if you want that. But of course you still have a lot of options to fine-tune and control the results. So before I show you how to install this workflow, let me walk you through it step by step and show you what you can get out of it when you combine it with traditional tools like Blender and After Effects or even more crazy AI tools. Whether you want to create stunning music videos or your own sci-fi short film, I think this workflow will change the way how you make movies. If you like AI deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe, and now let's get started. For this workflow I combined 3 AI tools that can also help you speed up your traditional VFX work, so let me quickly introduce you to them. One of the biggest challenges for compositing is to isolate the subject from the background. And of course you all know the classic technique to do that, the green screen. But green screens have a lot of disadvantages. Of course you need the space for them and you need to carefully light your subject so that it matches the background that you intend to use. They also restrict your actors' movements because they have to stay in front of them all the time. Luckily AI is getting extremely good at identifying and isolating people or objects in images or video, so I'm pretty confident that in the future we won't need green screens anymore. Look at these 2 promising tools, for example. You just need to give them a video and in a matter of seconds they just will remove the background. It's still far from perfect though. You can see the edges, we're losing a lot of detail and there is a lot of flickering going on. But we can actually fix that. Let's first look at another tool that gives us even more control over how we want to isolate the subject. It's called semantic segmentation. This is a computer vision task that will classify each individual pixels into predefined categories. And we can also filter out these categories by providing a simple prompt. Let's say we want to create a cool music video for this band. So we need to isolate her from the background. And you can see that the other AI tools do a pretty good job, but there's a lot of flickering going on and it's not too sure if it should include the person in the background. So now let's use semantic segmentation with the prompt person. We have the same issue. It's sometimes including the people in the background and the microphone is missing because that's not a person. She is the only woman in the image, so let's just change the prompt to woman. And now you can see the background is clean, but the microphone is still missing, so let's add that to the prompt. And this is looking pretty good, but you can see how precise that is, so now we actually need to add the black cable also. And there is the final key. There is still some flickering going on, it's absolutely not perfect, but we're going to fix that later. Now that we have our isolated subject, we can place her on top of any background. Let's say we want to create a pretty abstract music video for this band. So I'm using Runway's new AI video generator Gen 3 to generate a crazy impossible drone shot using this prompt, but that doesn't work. The lighting is completely different. Luckily there's another AI tool for this. It's called IC-Light and it can relight images and videos based on prompts or backgrounds and is really good at keeping the subject consistent. And when I now add the singer using IC-Light, it looks like this. And this works really well. I'm really happy with that. We even have like the shadows of the trees passing by on her face. But as you can see, the edges still look really bad. To fix them, we will use generative AI. So instead of painstakingly rotoscoping out individual hairs, we'll just say, screw it, let's just generate new ones. To do that, my workflow will automatically create a blurred mask around the edges of our subject and generate new details inside of that mask. And I'm still blown away by how well this works. Man, I would love to see a full music video with this technique. So if you create one, please send me a link or tag me in your work. I always love to see what you come up with. So now I combined all the tools that I just showed you into one single workflow inside of ComfyUI. ComfyUI is a node-based interface for Stable Diffusion and other AI models, and it lets you create really complex workflows by just stringing individual tools together. And to use my workflow, you simply need to drag and drop it into the ComfyUI interface. Now I know this looks intimidating, but you actually don't have to do a lot here. For most shots you just need to go to this group here, to the beginning, we're working from left to right, and upload a video of your subject. Let's take this one. Next we need a background, so we just need to scroll down to the background group, and here we can upload another video. And let's take this time lapse of a city that I also generated with Runway Gen 3. And now all I need to do is just click Q prompt and get a coffee or something. And here's our final video. But of course, there's a lot more you can do to fine-tune your result, so let me quickly walk you through the whole thing. So in the first load node here, I recommend setting the load cap to 20, so it will only load the first 20 frames, so that you can test out things faster. When you're done, you can just set it to 0 and it will load the full sequence. You can also put select every nth to 2, and this will load every second frame. And this will make it twice as fast. But of course we need to generate the missing frames again. So when you do that, make sure to go to the end here and activate this node using Ctrl B. And this will interpolate the missing frames. Back in the beginning, here you can put the prompt for what you want to isolate. You can check the preview frames if everything is working correctly. But you don't need to use this AI tool to isolate your subjects. You can also do it manually. Maybe you prefer using After Effects Rotobrush tool for full control, or you shot in front of a green screen and already have a perfect key. In this case, just export your sequence as a PNG sequence with transparency. Go back to ComfyUI, and you can deactivate these nodes up here and activate these instead. Now you just need to put the path to your image sequence here and connect this group instead. Oh, by the way, up here you can set your resolution. Now let's move down to the background group. Here you can choose whether you want to use a single image as the background, load a video as the background, or use an image sequence as the background. And depending on which one you use, you just load it in here and connect the corresponding node. In my case, I want to use this video here, so I connect the second one. Next, you can activate this node here, and this will just blur the background. This might make sense in close-up shots, for example. And next, let's take a look at the prompt. So this prompt is especially important for generating the edge fix. This generic prompt will work for pretty much any type of shot, but I recommend being a bit more specific here. I found that especially naming the hairstyle can help a lot with the edge fix later. Next to our prompt, we have the IC light group that will just relight the image. You don't have to do anything here. Below that, you have a group that will extract a detail map. This one will be used in the end to put detail back onto the final shot in case it gets lost. And it's important that we blur out the edges here because we generate new ones. And if we would take the original image sequence, you could see these weird edges. Next to that, we have the group that will create the automatic mask for the edge fix. And just make sure that all the edges are covered, and you can expand it a little bit or blur it a little bit depending on how close your subject is to the camera. You can also set how much the whole image should be diffused. And I recommend bringing it up a little bit because it will fix any flickering that IC light may introduce to the shot. Depending on how much you want to stylize your final image, you can bring it up even more. Finally, the last group is the edge fix, and you also don't have to do anything here. Make sure that these models are loaded here, and you can set the denoise strength here. If your face comes out looking too different because maybe you've overdone it a bit with the denoising, or your subject is like really far away from the camera, you can activate this face swap node that will swap your original face back onto the image, but don't use that for close-ups because the resolution can be quite low, and it usually works really well for close-ups anyway, so let's just keep that deactivated. Finally, we have this detail apply that will transfer some of the original detail back onto the final image based on this group that I just showed you. And finally, down here again, we have the interpolation node if you choose to render only every second frame. And that's pretty much the whole workflow. We didn't have to change a lot because I already did a lot of testing with this workflow to give you the best starting values. And if you're having any problems, you now have an idea where to look to fix them. And if you're supporting me on Patreon, you can also drop into the Need Help channel if you're still having any issues, and we'll try to fix it together. As a thank you for your support, you can also get access to the advanced version of the workflow, so let's quickly take a look at that now. For this one, I added all the other AI matting methods. And what I like to do for simpler shots is just to activate the other ones here and just run them all to see which one gives you the best result. Though my favorite is still the segment anything that's also included in the simple workflow. I also included an automatic prompt generator so that you don't need to change the prompt for each new shot. I'm using Florence 2 here, an AI captioning tool developed by Microsoft. So it will load the first image of your sequence, take a look at it, and write a description. And this text is then added to this generic style prompt here, and it's then connected to the positive conditioning. You can still use the fully manual prompt here, so you can just open that up and connect this one instead, and deactivate this automatic one if you don't want to use that. In this advanced workflow, I'm also giving you more options to choose from for the latent noise mask. So for example, using this one, you could completely rediffuse the background. And this will not only fix the edges around your character, but it will also try to match the background to the style of your character. And you can see previews of all the masks here and their name down here. And if you want to use this one, for example, instead of this one, you just need to go up here, go to this mask loader here, and select the other one that you want to use. I also added this post-processing group here, and you can add it to add some glow and some film grain to your shot. It's important to me to test out these workflows as much as I can to find the best settings before I share them with you. So let's now take a look at all the experiments I did with this workflow. I really like the combination with this workflow and other generative video tools like Runway Gen 3. It has so much potential for crazy music videos or absolutely wild VFX shots. And the craziness of these backgrounds also helps to hide some imperfections in the image. So next I wanted to try out a more classical VFX shot without so much going on. We have this man here walking along a street drinking his coffee, but let's say this movie is actually set in a city looking like a gothic cathedral. So I went to the AI image generator Midjourney and generated an image of that using this prompt. I tracked the footage in Adobe After Effects and made the image stick to the background. But now it still looks like a flat 2D image. So I went over to the Hugging Face demo of Depth Anything, an AI tool that will estimate the depth of your image. And you just need to drag and drop your original image here, and after a few seconds you'll have a depth map. An image where white pixels are close to the camera and black pixels are further away. And look at how well that worked. I can now use this depth information in a displacement effect in After Effects to fake a 3D parallax effect. But it's still not looking perfect. So to hide the imperfections, and also because the original video has a blurry background, I can also use this depth information to create a 3D depth blur using this effect. To make it feel a bit more alive, I also went back to Runway Gen 3 and generated some stock footage of a foggy, cloudy atmosphere using this prompt and added it on top of the image. Finally, I rendered out the background sequence as an H.264 video and imported it into my workflow, and this is the final shot. I also tried using Runway Gen 3 to generate a video based on one of these Midjourney images, and then I tracked that onto the background, and I think that worked really well too. For the next shot, I wanted to put myself in a futuristic environment, a futuristic spaceship. I used the free CamTrack AR app, which tracks the camera movement as you film, and you can easily import this data into Blender, for example. Next, I went back to Midjourney and generated a 360-degree image of a spaceship interior. I upscaled the Midjourney image using the ultimate Stable Diffusion upscaler, and I added it onto a sphere in Blender and exported it as a PNG sequence. And using my compositing workflow, I was able to create this shot. If you're interested in this technique, make sure to check out my video on AI virtual production. But now that we already have this perfect 3D track, I also wanted to try and combine it with my AI projection mapping and AI rendering workflow. So the way this works is that I create a rough 3D geometry around me in this shot. And in this case, I'm just reusing the scene that I created for my AI rendering workflow. Next, I create a panoramic camera in the place where I'm standing and export the depth information of that image. I can then use Stable Diffusion to create a final 360-degree image based on the depth information and a prompt. And then I can project it back onto the original 3D surface, creating a full AI textured 3D environment. And I'm absolutely blown away by how well this technique works. And don't worry, I will make a full tutorial on it soon, so make sure to subscribe. Finally, I rendered out the full shot as a PNG sequence, and with my compositing workflow, it now looks like this. But the amazing thing about this workflow is that we can now just go back into Stable Diffusion, change the prompt, generate a new image, change it out in the material in Blender, and we have a completely new scene. Now this was a lot of fun, but this shot in particular reveals that the compositing workflow still has some limitations. For example, it's not really possible to change whether the subject should be lit from the foreground or the background. IC Light also doesn't have an understanding of the full 3D geometry of the scene and where the light sources are in space. Instead, it will just try to light the subject based on the background. So you can see as soon as the light source leaves the image, the light will just disappear, even though it should of course still be there and still light the subject. And since it doesn't have this understanding of the full scene, it will look for the brightest area in the image and determine that this must be the light source. You can see in this shot, because the ground is so bright, it will use this as the main light source, even though it should be the sun. And this is also the reason that shots like this, where the camera moves around the subject, look a bit weird, because of course the light should stay in the same place. Another mistake that can happen is that the face comes out looking too different. And this might happen if your character is like really far away or you're rediffusing the full image. In these cases, you can use the reactor face swap node to swap the original face back onto the subject. But why would you even want to fully diffuse your image again? You may remember how we used a similar technique to integrate our characters into the background using my consistent and posable character workflow from one of my older videos. Here we diffused the full background to even create new shadows for our subject here. And this technique also works for this workflow. You just need to select the background mask in the advanced workflow and lower the control net strength or switch it to a depth control net so it can be a bit more flexible with the original image. With the current model, this will make your image look really bad, but that's because we're using a model that prioritizes speed over quality. But you can see it created really cool contact shadows here. We could use this technique with Stable Diffusion XL instead of this SD 1.5 model, and then it will look much better. Still not perfect though, but I still think it's an amazing proof of concept that in the future, as these models get better and better, we will be able to use this workflow to not only integrate characters into backgrounds, but also make them interact with them like this. So keep in mind that this is the first version of the workflow, and there will still be some artifacts like flickering and blurriness. But as I said in the beginning, I think it's already amazing for like low budget productions, for music videos, to create your own sci-fi short film for TikTok or YouTube. So now that you know how it works, let me show you how to set it up. I created this free guide that you can just follow along. The first step is to download ComfyUI. Go to this website here, scroll down and click this link to download it. So now you can just put this folder anywhere you'd like and extract it. This extracted folder is now your ComfyUI directory. Next, you need to install Git, and I've already done it, but you just need to install the standalone version and follow the installation steps. Next, you need to download the ComfyUI manager. Just go to this side here, scroll down again and right-click, save link as, go into your ComfyUI folder and save it there. Double-click on it to install the manager. Now you can just click Run NVIDIA GPU, click Run Anyway, and ComfyUI will start. Next, we need to install some models. As my checkpoint, I'm using this model right here. Just right-click on Download, save link as, go to ComfyUI, Models, Checkpoints, and Save. Next, you need to download a control net model, and the easiest way to do that is just go to ComfyUI, Manager, click Model Manager, search for Tile, and install one right here. Next, we need to install a motion model for Animate Diff, and we can also install that via the manager. Model Manager, search for version 3, and it's the first one up here. Next, we need to install the Animate Diff LoRa. You can get it from the Hugging Face website here. Just download this one. Then go to ComfyUI, Models, LoRa's, and I like to create an extra folder just for organization purposes. Just put it in this folder. Next, we need to install the model for IC Light, and we can do that in the manager. So just search for IC Light, and you need this one, the FBC one. When all the models are installed, we can just click refresh. To use my workflow, you just need to drag and drop them into the ComfyUI interface. But you see that a lot of nodes are missing. But you can simply install them by going to the manager, clicking Install Missing Custom Nodes, and then you'll get a list of all the nodes that are missing. You can just tick this box right here and click Install, so it will install all of them. When all of them are installed, you can just click Restart. Sometimes it can happen that nodes will not install correctly, like in my case, the reactor face swap. You can ignore this if you don't want to use this, but if you want to use this, you need to find out which Python version we're using. So for that, click on Python Embedded and run this Python application here. And you can see I'm using 3.11. So we will download this version that is 3.11. Next, go to your download location, right click, copy as path. Next, we need to go back to our ComfyUI folder, right click, open in terminal, and paste in this command line here. You can copy this part from the installation document and you want to put in your path here. And when it's done, you can close it, run NVIDIA GPU. And when I now start ComfyUI, you can see we don't have an error message anymore and this node is here. But yeah, I didn't want to use it anyway, but now we have it. Next, let's quickly double check if all the models are in the right place. So these will be automatically downloaded when you first run it. Make sure to put your checkpoint here and your LoRa here. The IC light should go here. We want the tile control net here and this motion module down here. And that's pretty much it. I hope you have fun with this workflow and I'm already excited to see what you will create with it. Developing and testing out these workflows takes a long time, so thank you very much to all my Patreon supporters who make these videos possible. See you next time.